What's in a name? More than you might think. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas. And this is your daily devotional for Thursday, November 13th, 2025. It turns out names are pretty important. We used to have a joke in my family that when one of us was going to bring home a friend, the question was going to be, who are his people? Who are his mother's people? It was a humorous reminder that names matter, family matters. When I was born, the fourth of four children, and what may politely be called an oops baby, my parents hadn't completely thought through the naming process for me. My parents used to tell me that they had to bring me home first to see what my little personality was like before they could settle on a name. I didn't take them all that seriously until the day I had to apply for my first passport. I was in seminary at the time, in my mid-20s, and was going to spend a summer abroad doing an independent study. Of course, when you apply for a passport for the first time, you have to produce your birth certificate. That's when I discovered that my parents were serious about their story about naming me. They couldn't take me home from the hospital without a birth certificate, but they didn't have a name for me yet. So the answer? When I saw my birth certificate for the first time, I discovered that I was officially Baby Boy Baskin. Now, I tell you this with fear and trembling, knowing that you're going to laugh your heads off and rib me for it the next time you see me. Now, there are two brief stories in the Old Testament that speak to the importance of naming. They are not the only stories that I could use, but they do make the point. The first is from Genesis, when Adam names the animals, and we read, "Then the Lord God said, 'It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper as his partner.' So out of the ground the Lord God formed every animal of the field and every bird of the air, and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called every living creature, that was its name. The man gave names to all cattle, and to the birds of the air, and to every animal of the field, but for the man there was not found a helper as his partner." And from Exodus, where Moses asks God who he should say God is when the Israelites ask him, we read, "But Moses said to God, 'If I come to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them?' God said to Moses, 'I am who I am.' He said further, 'Thus you shall say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you.'" Naming in the Old Testament, and in fact throughout the ancient world, had an almost mystical element to it. To name something was to establish dominance over that thing. In fact, to know someone's name was to exercise an element of control over that person. Hence, when Moses asks for God's name, God doesn't reveal God's name. Instead, God gives a sort of placeholder instead of a formal name. I am who I am. But to this day, Jews will not even speak that word in Hebrew because of the ancient belief that to call someone by name was a form of power. And they believe, correctly, that no one has power over God. When you stop and think about it for a moment, we don't call our God by a proper name. God is a generic term for any divine being, but not a name like John or Sally or Stuart. Other gods in the ancient world all had proper names. Baal, Zeus, Jupiter, names like we have. But from the ancient Hebrew perspective, one of the things that set God apart and above all other gods was that God didn't allow us to use, or really to even know, God's proper name. Names can give us a personality and an identity. Sometimes we grow into our names. Other times, we find names that more closely suit us and maybe even change our names. Either way, our name helps identify who we are. But by having no name, God reminds us that God is truly great and wholly and completely other than us. God is no buddy-buddy for us, and yet the God who won't let us know God's name invites us into relationship. It's quite an amazing thing if you think about it. Now may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.